The space station floated like a silent beast in the middle of the galaxy. Its metal walls were strong, its corridors endless, and its lights cold and sharp. The aliens called it Station Kareth, a place of power and control. To humans, it was nothing more than a prison in the sky. Among the thousands who worked there, most were humans. They cleaned the decks, carried heavy cargo, and worked in the shadows while aliens commanded the ships and made the rules. Humans were seen as tools, not equals, and one of those humans was a janitor named Daniel. Daniel's uniform was gray and simple, marked with stains from oil, dust, and cleaning fluid. Every morning he carried his mop and bucket through the long halls. His job was to stay out of the way, to remain quiet, and to clean whatever the aliens left behind. For years he had done this. And for years, no one had looked at him twice. But Commander Valak noticed him that day. Valak was a tall alien with sharp scales that shimmered under the white lights. His eyes glowed red like burning embers, and his voice carried the arrogance of someone who believed he was untouchable. The crew respected him out of fear, not loyalty. He ruled the station with cruelty, punishing weakness and mocking humans whenever he could. Daniel was cleaning the main corridor when Valak arrived. The commander's footsteps echoed like thunder, his guards following close behind. Other humans quickly pressed themselves against the walls to avoid being noticed, but Daniel stayed where he was, bent over his mop, focused on the floor. Pathetic, Valak hissed as he stopped in front of him. His voice carried far, and both aliens and humans turned to watch. You call that cleaning? Even a child of my species could do better than you. Daniel slowly straightened, but he did not look the alien in the eye. His heart beat steady, his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing anger or fear only made things worse. The commander smirked. He enjoyed the silence, enjoyed the way humans bowed their heads. He stepped closer and shoved Daniel with one clawed hand. Daniel stumbled, his bucket spilling water across the floor. The guards laughed, their cruel voices filling the corridor. Look at him, Valak sneered. Weak, useless, and clumsy. He cannot even hold a bucket of water. The humans watching lowered their eyes further, afraid of being chosen next. The aliens chuckled and whispered, treating it like a show. Only Daniel's hands tightened on the mop's wooden handle. Inside, something burned. He remembered the times he had been insulted, the times he had been forced to crawl like an animal. He remembered the sting of hunger, the weight of chains, the sound of his people crying. But his face showed none of it. He stayed silent. Valak leaned close, his sharp teeth glinting. Remember your place. Human, you are nothing but dirt beneath my boots. If it were up to me, I would throw you into space and let the stars tear you apart. The laughter of the guards grew louder. They thought it was entertainment. They thought Daniel was nothing more than a powerless worker. But Daniel thought differently. His eyes, hidden beneath the shadow of his lowered head, moved quickly across the corridor. He saw the control panels on the walls, the weapons carried by the guards, the emergency doors that could be locked from the inside. He noticed things others ignored. Because Daniel was not just a janitor. Once, before the aliens came, he had been more. He had been a soldier, trained to fight, trained to lead. He had lost his family in the war. And when the humans were defeated, he was captured and forced into servitude. Now, he carried a mop instead of a rifle. But his mind was still sharp. His spirit was still unbroken. Valak shoved him again. Harder this time. Daniel fell to the ground. His mop clattered against the floor. The aliens roared with laughter. The commander raised his arms in triumph, as if humiliating a man with no weapon was some kind of victory. Daniel rose slowly. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the effort of controlling his anger. He looked at the floor, not at the commander. His voice was low, almost a whisper. One day, he said to himself, so quietly that no one heard, one day, you will regret this. The moment passed. The aliens lost interest. The humans slipped away, and Daniel picked up his mop, cleaned the spilled water, and carried on as if nothing had happened. But deep inside, a fire burned brighter than ever before. Valak thought he had broken the janitor. He thought the humiliation was final, but he had only awakened something dangerous. As Daniel walked down the corridor, his reflection on the shiny floor stared back at him. A simple man, a janitor, Yes, but also a survivor, a fighter, and perhaps the one person who could turn the tables. The space station hummed with energy, unaware that history had just begun to shift. One insult, one. Daniel moved like a shadow through the station. He was always there, but never truly seen. The aliens walked past him without care. The humans barely raised their eyes. To everyone else, he was just a janitor with a mop and a bucket. But in truth, Daniel was watching, listening, and remembering everything. Each day, he memorized details. He knew when the guards changed shifts. He knew how long it took the lights to flicker during power rotations. He knew which alien officers argued in private and which ones were careless with their codes. He noticed that Valak always kept his access card on his left side. He noticed that the main control room door took 7 seconds to close. He counted every step, every echo, every chance. Daniel never carried a weapon, but his mind was sharper than any blade. While others bowed and obeyed, he planned quietly in his heart. The mop in his hands was only a mask. His true strength was hidden beneath silence. At night, when the station dimmed and the corridors emptied, Daniel worked alone. The other humans returned to the crowded sleeping quarters, whispering about their pain. But Daniel stayed behind, cleaning the halls while the aliens slept. That was when he studied the control panels most carefully. He wiped dust from the buttons, memorizing their symbols. He polished screens while his eyes recorded every number. Every flick of his mop was a cover for his real task. Sometimes the guards grew lazy and careless. They joked in their own tongue, believing no human could understand. But Daniel had learned, piece by piece, word by word. He had collected their language like broken glass until he could form it into a weapon. Now when they laughed, he understood the insults, the orders, the secrets. He also studied the humans. He knew who was strong, who was weak, who still dreamed of freedom, and who had already given up. He saw the fire in some eyes and the emptiness in others. Quietly, he measured them, wondering who might stand beside him when the time came. One evening, Daniel passed a window and paused. Outside, the galaxy stretched like an ocean of stars. The ships of the alien fleet glided between planets, their lights burning like angry eyes. Daniel stared at them and felt the weight of his people's chains. Yet he did not bow his head. Instead, he whispered softly to himself, "You think humans are finished, but you do not see what hides beneath the silence." His chance came sooner than expected, late one cycle. While cleaning near the storage decks, Daniel overheard 2 aliens whispering. They spoke about a supply transport scheduled to arrive in secret. They spoke of weapons hidden among the cargo, weapons too dangerous to be logged in the station's records. The guards laughed, thinking no human could hear them. But Daniel listened closely, every word carved into his memory like fire on stone. When they left, Daniel remained still for a long moment, gripping his mop tightly. The knowledge burned inside him. He now held something powerful. Information, the kind that could shift balance, the kind that could change lives. But Daniel did not rush. He knew patience was his greatest weapon. A soldier once taught him, "Wait until your enemy believes you are nothing, then strike when they least expect it." And Daniel lived by that rule. So he kept walking, kept cleaning, kept bowing his head whenever Valak or the guard passed by. He let them laugh, let them sneer, let them believe he was broken. The more invisible they thought he was, the more powerful he became. In the humans' quarters, whispers began to spread. Some had noticed Daniel's quiet strength. Some said he never showed fear. Some said his eyes were too sharp for a simple cleaner. They wondered if he knew something they didn't. They wondered if he was waiting for something. Daniel never answered. He sat in silence, fixing broken tools, patching uniforms, listening as others complained. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. He reminded them to endure, to keep breathing, to keep hoping. Hope was dangerous in the station. The aliens tried to crush it whenever it appeared, but Daniel fed it like a hidden flame, small, controlled, waiting to grow. In the quiet halls of Station Kareth, the janitor everyone ignored was preparing. His eyes saw cracks in the armor of the mighty aliens. His mind built a map of their weaknesses. His heart carried a promise of revenge. And though none of the aliens realized it, the galaxy had already begun to shift, not with fire, not with war, but with the watchful eyes of one quiet human who refused to break. The silence of Station Kareth was broken by an alarm. A sharp, screaming sound echoed through every corridor. Red lights flashed across the walls, bathing the metallic halls in a warning glow. Aliens shouted orders, their voices filled with panic. Humans froze in fear, unsure of what had happened. Daniel was cleaning the cargo bay when it began. He dropped his mop, his eyes narrowing. He knew alarms never rang without reason. Something had gone wrong, something big. The overhead speakers crackled with the voice of a frightened officer. Power failure in Sector 12. Backup systems not responding. The words spread like fire. Aliens rushed past, scrambling to control the situation. Humans pressed against the walls, trying to stay out of the way. Daniel didn't move immediately. Instead, he observed. The lights flickered. The floor vibrated slightly. He knew what it meant. The station was unstable. If the systems failed completely, oxygen and gravity could vanish in minutes. Commander Valak stormed into the bay, his red eyes burning with rage. "Find a problem now," he barked. His guards scattered, technicians scrambled to consoles. But nothing worked. The panels flickered, the codes failed. The mighty aliens who ruled over humans were suddenly powerless. Daniel's heart stayed calm. He had seen this before. Machines breaking, soldiers panicking, leaders crumbling. To him, it was familiar, but to the aliens, it was chaos. The humans nearby began to whisper in fear. Some thought they would all die if the systems collapsed. Some thought the aliens would blame them and bring punishment. But Daniel's eyes remained sharp, his mind working quickly. He stepped forward slowly, his voice steady. "If the main backup won't respond, check the auxiliary relay under the storage ducts." The words were quiet but clear. A few nearby aliens turned, glaring at him. "How does a janitor know this?" one of them hissed. Valak spun toward Daniel, his eyes filled with suspicion. "You dare speak when not spoken to?" Daniel lowered his head slightly, but did not retreat. "I clean every sector," he said simply. "I see things you overlook. The auxiliary relay often sparks. I've patched its leaks many times." The commander sneered, ready to silence him. But at that moment, the lights flickered harder. The entire bay shook, crates sliding across the floor. The alarms grew louder. They were running out of time. Valak hesitated, rage battling with desperation. Finally, he barked an order. "Check the relay." Two guards sprinted to the ducts, crawling inside with scanners. Moments later, their panicked voices came through the comms. "The human is right. The relay is overheating. If it fails completely, the sector will collapse." A cold silence swept the bay. Every alien turned toward Daniel. He stood still, mop in hand, as if nothing had changed. "Fix it." Valak roared at his men. But the guards struggled, their tools slipping, their hands shaking. Daniel watched quietly before speaking again. "You're doing it wrong. Pull the coolant lever first, or it will overload." The guards froze, unsure. Valak's rage deepened, but he had no choice. "Do it," he shouted. The lever was pulled, the sparks died down, and the alarm softened. Slowly, the station's systems began to stabilize. The red lights dimmed, the vibrating floor stilled. The immediate danger was gone. For a long moment, silence filled the bay. The aliens looked at each other in disbelief. The janitor had just saved them all. Valak's claws curled tightly, his pride bleeding. He could not praise a human, especially not one he had humiliated before. So instead he spat words filled with poison. "You were lucky," he growled. "Do not think this makes you important." Daniel lowered his head, showing no expression. But inside, he felt the first crack in the alien's power. The crew had seen it. The commander had panicked. The guards had failed. The janitor had remained calm. The truth had slipped through the cracks. Humans whispered in their quarters that night. They spoke of the janitor who saved the station. They wondered if he was more than he appeared. Some began to watch him with new eyes, hope flickering quietly. Daniel lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. his body tired but his mind alive. This was only the beginning. The aliens believed it was a mistake, a coincidence. But Daniel knew better. The balance of power had shifted, even if only a little. One crack had appeared in the wall of alien control, and through that crack, light would one day pour. The station had returned to its usual silence, but something had changed. The aliens walked with unease, whispering about the failure in Sector 12. The humans walked with a different kind of silence, one filled with secret hope. And at the center of it all was Daniel, still carrying his mop, still invisible, but no longer ignored. Commander Valak tried to erase the memory of what had happened. He ordered his men to keep quiet, to silence anyone who spoke of the incident. But rumors moved like smoke, impossible to catch. Every corner of the station whispered of the human janitor who had saved them when the aliens could not. Daniel never claimed credit. He kept his head low, working as always. But inside, something long buried began to stir. For years, he had hidden who he truly was, but now the mask began to slip. Late at night, when the humans returned to their cramped bunks, Daniel stayed awake. He sat alone in the shadows, his hands resting on the mop handle like it was a rifle. His mind drifted back to the past. Before the aliens had conquered, before the humans had fallen, he remembered the battlefield, the smoke, the screams, the fire in the skies. Daniel had not always been a janitor. He had been a soldier, a tactician in the human resistance. He had led men into battle, held the line when all seemed lost. He had watched friends die, his home burn, and his people dragged into chains. When the war ended, he was captured, stripped of his weapons, and forced into servitude. To the aliens, he became nothing, but to himself, he had sworn an oath. As long as I live, I will never stop fighting. Those memories were his strength. Every insult, every humiliation was fuel to the fire inside him. Every cruel laugh reminded him of the faces he had lost. He carried their voices with him, whispering in his heart, "Stand, Daniel, stand." The next day, while scrubbing the mess hall floors, Daniel overheard two young humans whispering. "Did you hear? He saved the station. The janitor saved us all." Another replied nervously, "Be quiet, the guards will hear." But Daniel only kept working. He said nothing, yet the smallest smile flickered across his lips. In the following cycles, more humans began to notice him. They asked for his advice on small matters, when to speak, when to stay silent, how to avoid punishment. Daniel's answers were short but sharp. "Watch," he told them. "Patience is a weapon," he said once. "Never let them see your fear," he whispered another time. Slowly, his word spread. Slowly, the humans began to see him not as a janitor, but as someone stronger. But the aliens noticed too. Commander Valak's eyes narrowed whenever he saw Daniel. He remembered the humiliation of needing a human's help. He hated the way the humans whispered when the janitor walked by. Hatred burned inside him, but he told himself Daniel was nothing. Yet deep in his mind, doubt began to creep. One evening, the station shook again, not from failure but from outside. Pirates attacked the trade routes, and the defense cannons needed to be powered. Aliens rushed to their posts, shouting, panicking. Humans were ordered to stay locked in their quarters. But in the chaos, Daniel slipped away, unseen. He moved like a ghost through the maintenance tunnels. Every turn, every hatch was already in his memory. He knew the station's veins better than its builders. He climbed ladders, slid through vents, and reached a small control room near the defense grid. He pressed his hands against the cold console, remembering his training. Fingers moved swiftly, rerouting power where the panicked aliens had failed. On the deck above, cannons roared to life, striking the pirates' ships. The attack was beaten back, but no alien officer knew how the power had returned so quickly. Only Daniel stood in the dark tunnel, sweat on his brow, a calm smile on his lips. That night, back in his bunk, Daniel sat quietly. The humans whispered again, calling him lucky, calling him strange. But Daniel knew the truth. This was not luck. This was strength, strength he had buried for years. Now it was rising, slow, but unstoppable. The janitor was still invisible to the aliens. But behind his calm eyes lay the mind of a soldier. Behind his steady hands lived the heart of a fighter. And when the time came, the galaxy would remember that even the smallest man, the most forgotten slave, could rise and change everything. The days after the pirate attack passed with tense silence. Aliens walked the corridors with sharper eyes, their hands close to their weapons. Humans kept their heads low, but whispers never stopped. They whispered of the janitor who had saved the station twice, once during the failure, once during the attack. Commander Valak grew restless. He could feel control slipping like sand through his claws. He still barked orders, still humiliated humans, but even he could not erase what had happened. He could not erase the memory of his panic, nor the calm voice of the janitor who had guided them through chaos. Daniel, however, did not seek attention. He kept cleaning, silent as ever. But each step carried more weight now. Humans began to follow him with their eyes. Aliens muttered his name with suspicion. The station itself seemed to breathe differently when he passed. The turning point came one cycle during a supply unloading. A group of humans carried crates under the sharp watch of alien guards. The crates were heavy, filled with energy cells. Sweat ran down the humans' faces as the aliens shouted insults. Suddenly, one of the crates slipped, crashing to the floor. The energy cells spilled, glowing dangerously. The guards panicked, pointing weapons at the humans. One barked, "You fools! If they overload, we all die." The humans froze, too afraid to move. The aliens argued, their claws trembling. Even Valak, who had arrived to inspect the unloading, looked uncertain. Daniel stepped forward. He crouched beside the scattered cells, his hands steady. He spoke in a calm voice. "Do not touch them too quickly. They need to cool first. If you rush, they will explode." The guards glared, silence human. But Valak, remembering the past, hesitated. "Explain," he demanded, his voice rough. Daniel looked at him briefly, then at the cells. "They are unstable. Your own manuals warn of it. I have cleaned your storage rooms long enough to know. Wait 30 seconds, then lift slowly and reset them one by one." The guards looked uncertain, but the seconds passed. Daniel counted softly under his breath, his calm voice steadying even the frightened humans nearby. When the time came, he moved first, lifting one cell carefully and sliding it back into the crate. Others followed his example. One by one, the danger passed. The cells glowed less brightly, settling into stability. The crisis was over, but the effect was far greater than just safety. Humans looked at Daniel with awe. The aliens shifted uncomfortably, and Valak's eyes burned with rage. Rage not only at Daniel, but the truth that his power no longer looked absolute. Later, in the human quarters, whispers spread louder than ever. "He saved us again," someone said. "Not just us. He saved them too," another replied. And then a dangerous whisper. "He should be the one in command, not Valak." Daniel sat quietly in the corner, repairing a broken tool. He said nothing, but he heard every word. He did not want glory, not yet. He wanted patience, timing, control. But fate did not wait. Within days, another crisis struck. A fire broke out in the engine sector, flames racing through the vents. Aliens shouted orders but panicked as smoke filled the halls. Humans were trapped, coughing, falling to the ground. Daniel moved before anyone else. He pulled two humans up, covering their faces with cloth, guiding them through the smoke. He shouted instructions, his voice cutting through fear. "Stay low. Follow the wall. Do not run." Even the aliens, confused and choking, obeyed without thinking. By the time the fire was controlled, dozens of humans and even alien guards owed their lives to Daniel. For the first time, voices spoke openly. "The janitor saved us. He saved all of us." Valak cornered him later, claws trembling with fury. "You think you're clever? You think anyone respects you? You are nothing. Daniel looked at him, his face calm, his voice quiet but sharp. Respect is not taken by words, it is earned. For a long moment, neither moved. The alien commander, feared across the station, stared at the janitor he once called worthless. And in that silence, power shifted. Not fully, not yet, but enough for everyone watching to feel it. The reversal had begun. The galaxy's first tremor came not from war, not from weapons, but from a human janitor who refused to stay broken. Commander Valak's pride was cracking. Every day he felt it. Whispers in the corridors, sidelong glances from his own guards, and the quiet confidence in the eyes of humans who once bowed with fear. The balance of power was shifting, and the center of that shift was the one man Valak had sworn to crush. Daniel, the janitor. For weeks, Daniel had saved lives, prevented disasters, and guided both humans and aliens through chaos. His voice was calm when theirs trembled, his hands steady when theirs shook. And now, no matter how much Valak roared, the crew remembered who had truly led them in moments of danger. One cycle, the breaking point arrived. A warning blared across the station. Unidentified ship detected. Hostile approach. Panic swept the decks. Alarms flashed red. And Valak stormed into the command hall, barking orders. Prepare defenses. All humans to quarters, he shouted. But the crew hesitated, their eyes flicking nervously between the commander and the janitor who stood quietly near the wall, mop in hand. The hostile ship fired, shaking the station violently. Panels sparked, alarms screamed, and systems collapsed one by one. Valak slammed his claws against the console. Get the weapons online. Now! But no one moved fast enough. The aliens stumbled, shouting over each other, their discipline broken by fear. Daniel stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Reroute power from Sector 9 to the defense grid, then lock down the docking bays. They'll try to breach there first. The hall froze. Valak spun toward him, fury blazing. Silence, human. You do not command here. But even as he shouted, the crew hesitated. Some of the technicians looked at Daniel, not Valak, and in that hesitation lay the commander's downfall. Daniel did not flinch. His eyes stayed sharp, his voice steady. If you do nothing, this station will fall in minutes. If you follow me, you might survive. It was not a plea. It was a truth, clear and undeniable. The next explosion rocked the station, throwing sparks across the hall. One alien shouted desperately, "Do as he says." And suddenly, movement returned. Hands flew across panels. Systems lit up, and the defense grid roared to life under Daniel's calm direction. Valak's face twisted in rage. He struck the nearest console, his voice cracking with fury. "You will all regret this. Obey me, not this human slave." But no one listened. Even his own guards looked uncertain, torn between fear of their commander and the undeniable truth of Daniel's leadership. The hostile ship launched its final attack, but the station's cannons, guided by Daniel's strategy, fired with precision. The enemy ship exploded in the dark void, fire blooming against the stars. The station shook, then fell silent. They had survived because of him, not Valak. The hall was quiet, every eye fixed on the two figures standing at the center. The alien commander trembling with rage, and the human janitor standing calm and steady. "You dare steal my command?" Valak hissed, stepping closer, claws extended. Daniel did not move. His voice was low but sharp. "I did not steal it. You lost it." Gasps echoed across the hall. The words struck deeper than any blade. For the first time, the crew saw the commander not as a leader, but as a desperate tyrant clinging to power he no longer owned. Valak lunged forward, claws raised. But before he could strike, two alien guards stepped in front of Daniel, blocking their own commander. "No more," one of them said quietly. The others lowered their weapons, not toward the janitor, but toward Valak. The commander froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had ruled through fear his entire life, and now fear had abandoned him. He had mocked Daniel as worthless. Yet now, even his guards chose the janitor over him. Daniel did not smile. He only looked at Valak with calm, steady eyes. This is your fall. Commander, you built your rule on humiliation. You never saw that respect cannot be forced. It must be earned. The aliens dragged Valak from the hall, his screams echoing down the corridor. Humans watched in silence, some trembling, some smiling through tears. For the first time, the station no longer belonged to the alien boss. It belonged to the people who had once been called slaves. It belonged to the man who had been mocked as nothing more than a janitor. And as the stars outside shimmered in the endless dark, everyone knew the galaxy itself had begun to turn.